Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Deep Thoughts. So today we're going to talk about dreams again. I'm not sure how this episode is gonna work out here, but I'm going to call this one Dreamed Reality, which is not a profound concept, but I have been sort of on a detective mission. So I have dreams a lot. I have dreams every single day of my life. And because I have dreams all the time, I can start to analyze them in ways that are more lucid as soon as I wake up. When I'm in my dreams, I might take in, before I go to bed, I'm like, I'm going to look at this, I'm going to look at that. But I don't, because I'm in the dream and I'm not lucid. I've had a few lucid dreams, in my lifetime. Usually they end pretty quickly once I'm lucid. But there's two angles we're going to study here. One is this notion that this particular reality that we're in is merely what I'm going to start calling hard dreaming. I thought about calling the episode that. Maybe I will call it that, just to kind of shake it up a little bit. What does that mean? Well, that means that this one feels really lucid, very solid, very literal. And that our dreams that we have within this particular frequency are lighter impressions of reality, meaning there are anomalies when you dream. Now I'm going to give you some homework in terms of how to look at your dreams. For those of you who are avid dreamers, I would just love to hear what you have to think. And I'll tell you what, the report on this whole thing of whether or not anyone's ever dreamed of space, we really have a couple candidates who have said in the comment sections that they were on Star Trek Enterprise / Voyager type ships. One said that he was heavily medicated because he was sick and he was on a lot of cough syrup and that kind of stuff. And I think the other one just told a story. But what's interesting is I checked with my buddy Sid Mead, who's an amazing artist who's drawn all kinds of movies, including the first Star Trek movie. And he said, I definitely have dreamed of being in space. And I said, okay, tell me. And he said, well, it was very abstract. It was very, in a void sort of thing. And it felt very disorienting, sort of like the closing act of Altered States. So I said, you really haven't dreamed of being inside of a spaceship. And this is a guy that's designed, Alien 2, Tron, half of Tron, almost all of Blade Runner. He's done spaceships after spaceship. He did the Leonov in 2010. The guy can live in any space that he can imagine. He sees all objects in full 3D and just paints them. He has a command of light that's ridiculous, right? But he hasn't had truly the lucid, I'm living on a spaceship. I've seen Star Wars 50,000 times. I'm on a Star Destroyer. I'm in a Millennium Falcon. Missing that dream. So I just wanted to follow up on that. But here's the homework. Here's what I'm discovering. And I alluded to this and mentioned it very specifically in one of the dream episodes a while back. But I've done further investigation within my own dreams when I wake up. And it's a very interesting set of circumstances that our dreams, in my dreams at least, I don't really have a body. And what's interesting is when I was young, my mom told me that she never had a body. She just kind of is controlled, and she's on a rail like an amusement park car, and then she just kind of goes through the world and experiences it. And I thought, wow, I'm not that way. I could totally control where I am, and I do within reason. But there is a lot of my dream that is actually on a rail as well. And what it is I feel like the geographical location in my dream is on the rail, more so than not. And you think you're making decisions to change your mind, and we're going to go there, we're going to turn around, go back here, I have to go get my car. Maybe we're in control. But I feel like when I really come back and just study it on a microscopic level, there's a huge nudge. Every time I'm making a decision about where to go, there's sort of a nudge, a bit like a video game where something is herding me like a sheep. If I'm supposed to go back downtown in my hometown because I'm on the outskirts of town, there'll be something that's alluring downtown that pull me in, or there's something behind me that's sort of threatening, although I don't get that many life-threatening dreams, but it could be a tornado coming in the other direction or a tidal wave or something. But back to the body thing. Now, I have hands and arms in my scenes in my dreams. But I'll give you a really funny dream I had the other day. I was in this office complex, and I deal with a lot of inventive technologies all the time, and I do my own share of things, but I'm always bringing together really brilliant companies and minds and stuff. And so we were at this table where we had all these guys debating the quality of some product that one of the guys in the room had turned in, and the conception was that he didn't do a very good job, didn't polish out his work, but he was young and he was hungry, and the only reason why he didn't polish it wasn't because he was lazy, it's just because he didn't realize that that's what polish is. And so I was sort of lecturing this guy about that. And again, I don't have a body, but I am seeing the reality, and I'm looking around and stuff, but I'm not leaning up on a table with my arms. I'm not seeing my limbs, right? So I go down I'm kind of finished that conversation up. I walked down the hallway, and it went from like sort of cozy skyscraper-y kind of office complex down the hallway, and now I'm all of a sudden staring down this corridor, which should have cubicles, but it's sort of like booths from a restaurant. And in one of the booths right in front of me is David Lee Roth. But in my brain, it's David Lee Roth sort of in his 40s, which I don't even know quite what that looked like. But I also know Ralph Sands, from Steel Panther. And I kind of thought it was him for a split second. Like he does an amazing David Lee Roth impersonation. So my brain's going back and forth. And all of a sudden, one of the David Lee Roth songs comes on, or Van Halen songs. I can't remember what song it was. And everyone's sort of saying, well, have you ever sang this song before? Kind of treating him like a karaoke singer with his own music. And obviously he starts singing, and it's amazing. And I walk down the hallway, and all of a sudden now down the corridor was actually a wall about 15 feet down. The cubes kind of go to a wall. It was like a little tiny submarine, dual cube thing, with just dual booths from a restaurant thing. I'm just giving you this detail because there's a bit of a realization when I woke up. I walk down, and all of a sudden the wall at the end disappears, and now I'm at a balcony looking off down into this beautiful like concert hall. Joan Rivers is down there, all dressed in this silvery blue sequin dress, and David's like sort of behind me still singing the song, but the whole room that I'm looking down into is singing the song, and it's getting to this huge crescendo, and the crescendo's holding. It's like almost like a Vegas ending, right? It's holding, and Joan Rivers is trying to read this speech that she's been given, and the girl next to me said, this is where Joan Rivers has to say this thing every night, and they've timed it out so that no one can ever hear what she's saying because the crescendo goes too long, and it happens every single night. And I just started laughing my head off that it was over, and then I applaud. She's walking off the stage. Lights on, I'm awake. All right. For the very first time, and analyzing this day after day after day, you need to understand, if like 2 weeks goes by between my last dream episode, you need to understand this 14 days that I have spent incredibly analyzing dreams. It just gets more and more intense. But what I realized was that my arms were underneath my visual frustum, right? I could see down, and I'm clapping my hands. Now here's the thing. I couldn't feel my hands clapping. I knew that Joan Rivers was walking off stage. She's passed on now, so it's kind of nice to see her. I didn't really realize that she was passed on in the dream. And so I realized that what the beautiful reference in the movie Forbidden Planet, which I mentioned in the Roswell episode, they talked about instrumentalities. And instrumentalities is a way of referencing your body. A being without instrumentalities is a spirit. It's a really cool word, so I want to define that because I'm going to use it a couple times. I realized that I'm a disembodied spirit in my dreams. I've been studying this a lot. Every single time that something physical happens in my dream, whether I got someone on my lap, like a girl on my lap that I don't know, but she's my dream girlfriend, I'm seeing what I want to have happen. I've even had dreams where a girl comes up to me, and it's just a fantasy person. It's no one real. But in my life, this is like probably, I'd say about 15 years ago, I was in between relationships. I was in a bad relationship. No, actually, I was in a bad relationship, and it was just sort of one of these things of like the only thing I really wanted was someone to just be loving, because this person I was dating was very stoic at the time, and I just dreamed about a girl wanting to be with me, and then just just wanting to put her arms around me, and I get to do my man thing. And in my dream, I thought, wow, she hugged me, and that felt great. And when I woke up, it actually helped me get out of the relationship I was in, because I was like, we don't even have the basics, man. I just had a dream, and I didn't dream about having sex. I dreamed about being hugged by someone. I mean, how pathetic is that, right? So anyway, what I realized was that all I was really experiencing was the emotional swing that the hug would have given me. The approval, or the, just the mutual companionship feeling you get when you're with the right person, right? So now what do I mean by sort of hard dreaming or dreamed reality? Now, dream reality is sort of, I may not use that simply because it seems more cliche. Hard dreaming is going to make you a little more interested. I have an analogy that I think will sum it up and kind of get you into what I'm talking about here. It's not a perfect analogy, but the more you let it sort of sink in metaphorically, I think it'll work. It goes like this. We have a trampoline. You're standing on it, and you're not moving. You're there. You may move a little bit, but not much. Your feet are on the ground. You can feel them. But then you start jumping up and down. And at first, you're barely coming off the ground. You're kind of getting your bearings together. And then eventually, you start jumping really high. The highest you can jump on a trampoline of its size. And you know that when you go up into the air, there's sort of this little moment of fantasy. As soon as your feet really leave the rubber of a trampoline surface, you're flying in the air. And you can dream that you're, for a split second, capable of flight. But you start to see the world from a much higher vantage point, so you can dream that you're really tall, whatever. But the second a human being leaves a trampoline surface, you know that you're on a very temporary state of existence. That as you are airborne, you are suspending the physics that typically adhere to your body and make reality hard. There's been a lot of science fiction stuff written where holographic characters become hard light, right? That's the whole thing with the holodeck in Star Trek and the original hologram in Red Dwarf. This is our dream one. Now, I mentioned several things about reality in a couple of my dream episodes back, one of which is this weird echoing of our consciousness seemingly controlling the world. There's the idea that space doesn't exist, and I want to dive a little bit further into that. I fear that maybe some things aren't supposed to be figured out, which sounds utterly ridiculous on one level. But now think about this. Think about the fact that perhaps we live forever as souls. Perhaps there is only one soul, and we are simply traveling through a bunch of different mortal coils in a fourth dimensional way, such that we actually believe that we have different identities. But I was talking to a friend last night, and I said, because we were talking about people that are unhappy, that are on the internet and just crapping on everyone and posting, these horrible things on Facebook. They just perpetually post things on Facebook that it's like, oh, look at this dog get tortured, look at this baby get chopped up. And it's like, they're just exuding horrid frequencies, and they tend to be very unhappy in life. And it just, you sort of wonder, where do these people come from? How do they get to these states? And it just occurred to me, the circular logic, if we were the same being, I know it's heavy for some of you, if we were the same exact being, then hating ourselves means that we are actually hating everyone else. If we hate everyone else, then we kind of hate ourselves. And because everything is a cyclical loop at some point in this inverted sphere, there's an apex in the center where all of the timelines collide. That's not technically true in that shape, but go with me on it. Now, space very well may exist, and there might be other restrictions as to why we don't dream about space. Now, what I forgot to mention was that I do not believe I've had any detailed dreams about Africa, South America. I don't think I've dreamed about most major cities in Europe, Because if I cannot conceive of them, like I know of Madrid in Spain, for instance, there are a lot of Gaudi exhibits and stuff in there I've seen in catalogs, but regardless of how much I obsess on Gaudi art, I don't know the city. I don't know how Madrid is laid out. I just don't know anything about it, so I would never be able to physically dream about it. And if I did, and if it was accurate, then something else would be revealed about the universe, and that truth just travels in, I don't know, brain frequencies or something. I don't believe I've ever dreamed about the Eiffel Tower. Technically, I've been there, but I was a child, you know. So space just may be one of these things that we can't dream about because we've never been there. Now, at the same time, we watch television shows a lot, and I don't know if we actually ever dream about being in the television show. There's all kinds of shows. I don't mean to belabor it too much, but you know, there are those of you that watch Game of Thrones religiously. Do you dream of being in Game of Thrones? I've watched Deadwood, Carnival, all these, Carnival especially. I've seen it 4 times now, all the way through, and I've never dreamed of being a part of that carnival. But now, when we know it's fiction, then the restriction to dream about something that is fictional might make complete sense. Well, of course you can't dream of something fictional. It doesn't exist. There's a lot of cartoons that we grew up on, Wizard of Oz type movies as well. Don't remember ever being in like a toon world. I used to have this theory. It seemed to work for about a year, where if I was having a problem going to sleep, if I was suffering from insomnia as a kid just because I wanted to stay up and do stuff, I would force my brain to think about something that was entirely fictional. The entire location of which I was trying to imagine myself was totally fictional. So I would often dream about being in cartoon worlds. Anything, a Ralph Bakshi thing, Cool World, a Disney thing, Tron thing, but the world had to be completely fictional. And as long as I could think about fictional places, I don't know if it just wore out my mind trying to suspend reality and take care of all the stuff that is taking care of us in reality, right? I don't feel like I'm concentrating on this little piece of furniture I have here with the 3 chairs. I don't feel like I'm doing it, so it's there. It's always there when I wake up. I could put a surveillance camera on it and look at it from across the world, and it's still there, and I don't think about it being there. But my realization yesterday, and talking about this circular logic thing of perhaps we're all the same soul, one, it would actually be a beautiful sort of explanation for a God, and that whatever level of maturity we achieve as a global consciousness throughout the universe is really what you would call a God. And just as a funny little aside, imagine that were true, and that we're not that old, and that back, 4,500 years ago when God's a wrathful child, that's us. We're a bunch of wrathful children, and so we're kind of like crying baby. I don't think that's the case. But now, where would space come from? The concept of space, if it weren't real, but we project it in our own minds because we believe it to be real. Where would it come from? Now imagine that we lived in some sort of void, a complete void, and I mean nothing. There is no concept of mass, there is no concept of light, but at some point, we don't necessarily create energy or matter. There is no real concept of infinity or finite. There is merely consciousness, which who knows what that's made out of. But we start to, like Disney's engineers say, imagineer together some tiny, minuscule form of reality, a molecule of energy, a packet of energy. And we, over gazillions of freaking measurable years, manifest up that reality such that we have a fabric of reality. And the more detail we can conceive of that fabric, the more detail we can make things out of it. And we start to build life on some crystalline level, on some energy packet level. And it manifests up to the point we do have perhaps a disk floating in space that really makes no sense to the overall universe. And, I'm just playing with flat Earth for a split second, because it doesn't have to be a globe. It just has to look like one in our brain. It could be the simulation we always talk about, the memory bits that are then interpreted as a 3-dimensional space. But we first see space as a void, as black. We've managed to think up the disk. We've managed to think up a ball even. Maybe we transform the disc into a ball, and so the whole thing is we're both right, but we're in the stage of the ball. But maybe global consciousness can turn us back into the disc. Again, we might be simply the simulator owners ourselves. And so instead of looking out for solutions and looking out for other beings to be in control, it could be as simple as our hive mind working together to make reality. But eventually, we start to imagine, for whatever reason, maybe it's through a mishap, a star, something up there. Maybe we envision these round orbs that are stuck to a firmament. Maybe we have to think of a firmament because we don't have a sophisticated mind to think of anything different. So we do. We screw in a little light bulb up there, and for whatever reason they give way because we forget to think about them being repaired or whatever. I'm riffing as a matter of principle, not as a matter of scientific observation. But now if you think about... there's several scenarios in reality where people have been isolated. You can see this in homeless people from time to time when they've really been isolated for a long time. We have children that are raised in feral conditions due to all kinds of different things. But if I would say this, they invariably create false, well, I wouldn't say false. They invariably create some form of security. And it's typically related to turning the infinite into the finite. They build forts out of things. One, you need protection from the elements, of course. But the other thing is to say, I need to feel like I've got control over a space. That's sort of an inherent thing. We want to be free. But at the same time, you don't want your living room to be as big as the entire surface of the planet or plane of existence that we're in, because that would be your responsibility, wouldn't it? So we buy homes and we build walls around them, and we take care of 1,200 square feet as opposed to the whole planet. I talked about a very weird experience I have, which I will tell you to this day it was extremely real, which was based on me being, for all intents and purposes, sort of possessed, sort of sharing a consciousness with this other being when I woke up probably about 3 years ago. And it was just with me, and I walked down the hallway of my house. I'm buck naked. It's middle of the afternoon. I'm going to be taking a shower here. And I just stopped in the middle of my hallway, and the relevant thing I'm re-mentioning this about is that it was thinking on its own, not talking to me. And one of the first thoughts it had in standing in the hallway was that, one, I felt what it was feeling, and it was feeling infinity. And it was warm, it was nice, it was like you just didn't have any, it wasn't like you were in a pool where you're afraid to go down to the deep part of the pool, because it felt like, as far as you go down, it feels like where you are right now. So there is no increase in pressure, you're just where you are. But it wasn't a water thing. But he said, or whatever it said, isn't it funny how they build little homes to make themselves feel secure? And all of a sudden, the world was a ball, and the house was on top of the ball, but it was massive. It was like a little caricature drawing. And at that moment, I was just in his consciousness, and I thought, yeah, it is funny how that does make us feel really secure, building walls around us and that kind of thing. Now, obviously, if I was really engaging this being, I would have said something like, yeah, but it gets cold in the wintertime and hot in the summertime, and it rains in some parts of the world really badly. So I don't know what kind of point it was trying to make. But what I also find interesting is that when we have these conversations by ourselves, you're waking up in the morning, you're going to bed at night, you're just an introspective human being throughout the day, there definitely is a lot of control you can have over your thoughts, and you start to disengage from other paradigms, and you're able to create your own paradigms to hopefully analyze. It's like you're building your own microscopes so that you can look at stuff from a unique perspective. But there is something really beautiful about being physically with someone who has an open mind, like we do on this show, and what you do is you riff for a very quick session to really get on the same page. The whole thing is about getting on the same page, and then you take steps together. And man, it is really interesting how far you can go. It's almost as if your legs join in length, and you can take larger steps, and within a really short period of time, traverse a lot of extra theories. And, a lot of the experience that I've had in those situations is that you throw away bad ideas really quickly, and you reevaluate them and you cross-reference them and you go, yeah, but this, and this. And the nice thing is every hive mind circuit we add to our global consciousness, if you're truly evaluating, trying to get the truth with a capital T, you start to knock down things that don't make sense, the connections that can't exist. It's like a Dell logic problem. There used to be this company, just like I think it was spelled just like the computer, used to sell these books. I think they might still sell them. They called Dell logic problems, and they're little books you could buy. My dad used to give me tons of them, which really helped my brain develop. But essentially, they tell you a story, and they've got this sort of Excel spreadsheet on the page, and you, through process of elimination, by reading the story over and over and over again, you were able to say, well, then that can't be true, then this can't be true. And eventually, you do it so much that you find out all the facts about the situation. It's sort of like a Sherlock Holmes kind of thing. If you want to augment your brain, find things like that, logic problems. They are fun, and you can complete them over weeks. You don't have to do it at one setting. You can start 10 of them in one day and then just keep kind of iterating over them. But it'll help you when you're starting to evaluate what you believe. But now let's just say that the world is a dreamed reality, and that the overall consciousness of man creates that reality. Well, now let's look at it from a couple perspectives real quickly here. What if no one told us that that's the way it works? Maybe that's a hidden truth just to make life a little more interesting and seem random. But in the end, whatever the overwhelming thought of mankind is, starts to create that reality by probably very slow turning, sort of like the analogy of turning the Titanic around. It's going to take a while. It's never going to be an abrupt, acute thought change where it's like, boom, we're all wearing spandex, you know. But if we don't know that that's the way it works, think about how unbelievably susceptible we are to controlling each other and to being controlled by others. It's going to be a little bit of a stretch, but man, I don't think we should allow it to sound like a stretch, which is, if the global thought, is that a reality is a reality even though it's not, then we could find ourselves dominated and complicit in ways that we previously weren't. I think that it's probably very, very safe to say that the further you go back in time, minus a couple little spurts, but let's just go back maybe 7,000 years. That gets rid of this AD and puts us 5,000 years back in the BC. I'm assuming that the world population was fairly reduced, and that this slave labor stuff was probably not possible, and that man woke up and took care of business as a matter of survival and was essentially as free as man could possibly be. We probably dreamed of days of working together, but weren't quite able to do it. I think man's really old on this planet, quite frankly, even if we're spliced. But now what's the name of the game? The name of the game is that a very small reservoir of human beings is starting to feel the fact that we're losing control of our world through tyrannical layers of banking, through tyrannical layers of government, enforced by military, augmented by corporations. We're utterly divided down the middle when it comes to our loyalties of whether or not you're a left person, a right person, what race you are, all these ridiculous things, right? I'm not going to get off on a huge tangent on that, but we need to look at some of the elements that perhaps understanding the reality might actually control. But now, what if those who are engaging reality, and those who understand it, what if there's a group of people that understand this, and they understand it beautifully through experiments, through just the books were never burned, they actually kept them, and the book said, man projects reality, this is all an illusion, this is your most popular reality. And then if you want the world to go to you, just like The Secret or What the Bleep Do We Know / Law of Attraction, you merely must project into the minds of your fellow man this concept of whatever reality you want them to believe. And the more that you can get them to stumble into your belief system, it doesn't have to be proven, but if you can trick them into thinking that you've proven that reality to them, well, you will get whatever result that reality will yield to you. So if you want chaos, you can create chaos in people's brains. If you want order, you can create order. Now, we believe that the world, splits between the house of chaos and the house of order. And there's a very interesting reality that if we don't have good and evil, you will know neither. But we're always talking about on this show and everyone on the internet talks about who's awake, that ingesting materials of representing reality, be it a newspaper, a magazine, a television show, a movie, an internet webpage, every other form of media that you don't author with your own eyeballs and ears, meaning not staring at a fictional, or you're not staring at a piece of medium that's synthesized, but real reality. I do the show in the backyard, so it's utter reality. I got no cell phones around me. I don't have anything around me. This is just life. This is just how the universe is occurring to me at the time, right? But let's just say that dreamed reality is real, but it's also not as flexible as dreams. Now, if I said to you, I'm going to put you in a dream that seems really real, usually we get euphorically excited and we think, okay, that's going to be great. I can have a lucid dream. I'm in total control. I am God. And if I want to sleep with that person, I do that. If I want to drive that car really fast, I do that. If I want to fly in the air, yada, yada, yada. It's your whole list of stuff, right? But now what if I say to you, yeah, but you remember the whole trampoline analogy? When you're up in the air, it's fantasy time. But what goes up must come down in this particular analogy, and you're going to come back to a hard dream where the rules are pretty intense. It's still very flexible. It is based on how you resonate your brain within the law of attraction. If you resonate poverty, you are going to be broke. If you resonate wealth, you interact with society, you interact with life, and you get aggressive and you want things, you can get wealth. Whatever you want, stability. But if they understand that, and you don't, you're their bitch. In fact, your whole mortal life, as the incarnation, first, middle, last name that you are right now, has been a waste of time, or it has at least been, if nothing else, if you pull out and you have a big laugh, you just go, oh my gosh, you got me. You got me, man. I got into that body and I bit off on that whole right-left paradigm thing, and geez, you got me to waste my whole life, ha ha ha, we live forever, it's all okay. Maybe that's how loose we should be. I used to really roll my eyes when people would do speeches. David Icke's done this a couple of times, where he gets on stage, and there's a lot of people who've done this, and they simply say, let's all resonate a frequency that we want so we can change the world. I used to think, what a bunch of hippie shit that is, right? And in the end, it now makes sense to me. And I think probably David Icke, I know some of you guys don't like me talking about that guy, but he really reminded us of books that have been written about frequencies. And obviously the whole universe is nothing but a bunch of frequencies, and we simply perceive them as mass because they happen to hold form or move slower or entangle energy in a pattern that looks like a beam that holds up this porch thing that's casting shadows on me, right? So how do we take control? What's the use of this episode if there's not some sort of resolve, some sort of theoretical technique that we can use to gain control of our lives? Isn't that what we're trying to do? Well, let me propose it to you this way. I think we do like random things happening to us, and I'll prove it to almost all of you. If any of you have ever watched a television show or a movie, and let's just for the split second remove the notion that the intelligence agencies infiltrate the scripts, that the themes are all botched to screw up society and its fabric. Let's just say your neighborhood writes the script, they act it out on a play in your local neighborhood, local theater, whatever, so you're not going to get tainted by anything. But the reason why you go to those events, the reason why you go to certain public experiences is because you've chosen the parameters by which you want to be entertained. Someone says, hey, you want to come to my play? And they go, what's it about? Oh, it's about kind of King Arthur and stuff. We're going to be doing some neat stuff, reenacting some Shakespeare. And you happen to like that genre, or you don't mind it. And so you show up, and within there, you know that there's a limit of content type you're going to be experiencing. If they said, oh, it's about Genghis Khan killing a bunch of people, it's going to be blood and guts, blood and guts, blood and guts, you can go, no, thank you, right? But when you choose something, you choose sort of a jar of random chaos that you want to experience. You want to let go of reality and not be in control just for an hour or two or whatever. Let yourself observe a bunch of hard work that's going on around you, right? So there is part of life that we want to control. We want to sort of steer our life within the genres of things that we want to experience. Now, there's a few people in the world I've met that just literally, they don't give a fuck, man. They'll go experience anything once. And in the end, they're sort of weird people, but to each their own, right? Do no harm and I will never judge you, right? But now think about that mechanism. We choose a genre by which we go and interact with reality. But now your desires for the genres that you want to experience are things that can be very good for you, and probably things that are fairly destructive against you, things that will permanently hinder you in this mortal coil, in this particular instance of life. Now, I may seem to the spirits of the universe to be extremely foolish in trying to limit experiences on any level, because perhaps the spirits of the world, of the universe, simply go, dude, this is the point. The point is to experience everything you can possibly experience. Could be true. I'm going to choose to theme each one of my mortal coils into a very focused area. I don't need this mortal coil to run off and experience, murdering a bunch of people or doing something else really chaotic and strange. I have my predispositions for fawning over freedom and sovereignty and happiness and destiny for others. I'm not sure they're, I'll put it this way, I am certain in this particular instance of my life that there is evil, a destructive, chaotic force that does harm, that removes choice. Perhaps it's something that needs to be there. But if this is a dream reality, then maybe these are algorithms that we can shake. Now, let me throw this something at you that people don't usually ever talk about, at least full on, direct on. Now, imagine that somehow we, in some future time, figure out how to completely control reality. We utterly and completely harmonize out everything that we have devised as evil. There's no war, there's no killing. Maybe we allow accidental deaths to happen, if a tornado happens. But maybe just through the sheer lack of being bombarded by evil, we become incredibly intelligent, because there's nothing else for us to do with our brains but to augment. And let's say that we achieve, through some mechanism, a state of what man today would call heaven. And there may be a God, maybe not a God, doesn't really matter in this argument, but there is nothing bad going on anywhere. And I mean, we have cleansed all conceivable reality from having anything, do anything against anyone else that they don't want to have happen. Now, we're in the state of nirvana. Some will call it hell, some will call it heaven. Now, how long does it take before one of the spirits says, you know what, this sucks? And a bunch of people gasp up there, wherever the hell this is, and they go, what are you talking about, brother? And he goes, there's no mystery in life. There's no loss. Therefore, there is no gain. This sucks. We absolutely, positively have to bring back the darkness. What we used to call evil. Maybe this stuff is completely necessary for us to feel like we have choice, to feel like we've ever been lucky, because we have to be unlucky. How do we know that a back massage feels good unless we've got back pain and lactic acid stuck in our muscles? And so they go, okay, well, I guess you got a point there. What are we going to do about this? How do we bring back this stuff you're talking about? By the way, there's a great X-1 episode about something like this. I'll mention in a second. But the dude goes, I'll be the devil. Okay, well, what's that mean? Well, I will just simply go around and I'll fuck with every single one of you. I'll destroy your lives. I'll whisper in your ears. But we got to kind of figure out what form of life we're going to take. These spiritual, it's hard for me to sneak up on you as a spirit to a spirit. So we need to have another vessel we can be in so that we can kind of keep this game going. And I think life will be infinite, and it will be very interesting. And maybe they try that out for a little while, but they live forever. And they go, man, this gets really boring. Just like the Q in Star Trek. We've seen everything. We've done everything. Well, what can we do? And we're just all sitting around up there in heaven or whatever. Even the devil's taking a little break, and he's like, I got an idea. We are born, we live, and then we die. And we just repeat that over and over again such that we don't learn everything. There's a lot of stuff we've learned. It takes a long time to read all these books up here in the Congressional Library of Heaven. And so maybe that's it. And there'll be a lot of peril involved. Hey, let's change sort of the environments that we grow up in. Maybe some of them are really wealthy, some of them are really poverty stricken, and maybe people are kind of grow up in bad families. I'm just gonna mess with all you guys. But in the end, we come back up here. We're all okay with this, right? There's going to be pain and there's going to be suffering, but you're okay with this, right? Because this is the way it has to be. And they all agree. But the only mechanism that makes it actually occur is that the spirits have some sort of imagination state, which we, at night, when we have a very poor facsimile of reality, we call it a dream, with the illusion that we actually wake up. But the whole thing's a dream. If you've ever, George Carlin said this whole thing about stuff. And he goes, we live so that we can gather stuff. And then we go on vacation and we take a little bit of our stuff with us to the hotel or the resort. And then he goes, then someone will invite you to another location. You got to take a little bit of stuff of your little bit of stuff to the other place, right? The idea is that we're taking a little bit of our reality and we're making a sub-reality to it. It's endearing, it's interesting, but it's certainly not reality. You never wake up from a dream, and I feel like I have extremely realistic dreams, but now that I'm able to measure dreams through a metric of what is reality, I'm now deciding that and concluding that I really am not dreaming that well. I mean, I'm not dreaming, I'm dreaming fine, but I'm not dreaming and replicating reality. But to loop back real quick, there's an X-1 episode, which is the 1950s radio series before Twilight Zones came out. And there was a funny episode where you have a bunch of colonists who have settled, and they have no crime, and they have no death, and they have no murder, and they have no bad things. But an ambassador's coming from the main planet to visit. And so in total naivete, the mayor of the town says, oh my gosh, I did a bunch of research on what they're expecting to see. What's their world like? And they have murder and they have thieves. And they have all these other things. So he hires this one guy at this meeting. He goes, you need to be our town thief. I think you need to murder someone. And he's like, well, why is that? And he goes, well, because I think he's a sheriff too at the same time, or maybe the old man's a sheriff, can't remember. But they have to commit a crime because they're trying to emulate what the world where these other folks come from. And it's interesting that, most of you have conceived of the whole good and evil, that you must have evil to recognize good. And that's a bizarre reality. We're always talking about the conquer and divide. Well, good and bad, being a fabric of any reality, is definitely going to keep reality itself divided. It just will. I don't know if there's a euphoric way to meld the two halves together. If any of you have seen the movie Dark Crystal, there's an amazing theme of the entire film where there was a unified being at the beginning. Crystal was shattered. And when the crystal was shattered, the being was divided into its dark side, the Skeksis, and the light side, of which name always escapes me, but there's this good soft kind. The good soft folks, they're very low to the ground, almost like little sloths, and the other side is upright, but they are into all kinds of money and opulence, where the other ones live like Native Americans. It's almost like a European Native American thing. And of course, they resolve the issue by the end of the film. So I think that in living in a divided universe, it is hard to conceive of a stateless universe, or a universe whereby which there is this kind of balance, between the two. I don't know if that can exist or what that would be like. But let me ask you this. If I had your respect, and by no means am I trying to say at this moment this is a literal question, but imagine I should abstract this away from myself. If someone had your respect and they said to you, don't be so sure that you know what reality is. Don't be so sure. Now, if it's someone that you trust, that you know loves you and protects you, that would be the best kind of person to hear that kind of statement from. Because instability can lead to a lack of control on one level, right? But as a grown adult, or at least a completely awake person, meaning you don't know all the truth, but you are tracking to it, that's what you're trying to do. Is there a way that we can ask that question daily, minute to minute, second to second, not lose our minds, not feel like we're lost, not feel any despair whatsoever? Quite the opposite, quite the inverse. We feel amazement and excitement. When we're little kids and we go to amusement parks, we cannot conceive of the park. Like if you're 7 years old and I take that 7-year-old to Disneyland, and I do not show them the top-down map. I don't show them any videos of the place. I just take them in the front door. And to them, one, they're small in size, right? But they start looking around, they hear the music, they smell the sugar, they ride the rides. There's just all kinds of different genres of everything, from space to guys playing player pianos to the Adventureland, Frontierland, all that stuff. Take them to a castle, for God's sakes. Think about the beauty of infinity in that mind at that moment. And consequently, what's interesting is if your parents took you to those organizations when you were young and that experience was imprinted on you, you typically are a Disney fan for the rest of your life. At no point does it map to Mickey Mouse. At no point does it really map to, initially, Walt Disney. What it is a metaphor and a theme for looking on the bright side of things and feeling adventurous and really loving infinity and surprise. Now, provided you grow up and become creative, you will obviously start seeing behind the ride and you will want to participate on a creative level. But now, what if reality is a bit like the theme park? What if reality is an amusement park, a video game, like we always say, the best massive multiplayer online game ever, but we don't know that we are the engineers and the artists and the level designers because we think dreaming is the subset of what happens when we go to sleep. Now, I asked the question about how we would address this. How would we start to take control of this? One, the first thing is to really start observing your dreams. Realize or ask yourself the question, do you have a body in your dream? And even if you see arms and legs from here to there, from time to time, think about how throughout the percentage of your dream day, how often do you see them? Do you only see them at moments when you need them? When you need to hold someone, when you need to applaud like me in my dream? Do you just simply have them as you have them? And do you feel it? When you clap your hands at a concert, what's really interesting in real life is that we don't clap our hands that often. And so when we pound our palms together, it's a really weird experience. And if you're trying to create a standing ovation because you want your favorite band to come out behind the curtain one more time, your hands start to hurt. You start to realize, Jesus, I don't do this that often. And having been to a few hundred concerts in my lifetime, I could definitely say that when I clapped my hands in my dream the other day, there was absolutely no sensation of my palms hitting each other. It was merely an apparition to complete a dream. So let's realize what we're able to do in our dreams and what we're not able to do in our dreams. Don't worry about the story so much. Worry about the physicality for just a little while. But then when you wake up, or when you're looking at this video, or listening to this on your podcast reader, just ask yourself for 1 second, what if this is hard dreaming? This is just a really fixed point of absolute imagination. And yes, we can suffer. We can feel that pain. We can feel our palms hitting each other. We can be terrified or whatever. And unlike a dream where you forget it when you wake up, you have a little temporary experience that is largely forgotten. This particular one can change you for life, for the better, for the worse, totally benign in the center. Now, what do we stand to gain by doing this? I would say to you that if you were to remotely suspect that reality was a dream, then you would understand even more than you already do that if anyone can infuse in your mind, inject in your brain a thought of any kind, that's dangerous. Unless you approve of that message, as they always say in little campaign commercials, right? That should be the thing, right? Every single thought that goes into your subconscious should be almost like a campaign election ad. My name is so-and-so, and I approve this message, and then it goes poof right into your back, your subconscious, your long-term memory, marked either true, false, or maybe. So, while we're on the subject, I want to put out a note. There's this whole thing about taking life too seriously. And the opposite of that would be rolling with the punches, right? Going with the flow. I have seen pros and cons of both philosophies. Those who take life too seriously, they are so anal about everything that happens to them that they're unable to laugh and enjoy life. And usually the path that they travel is really pretty narrow. If you were to map, say, their journey in the United States of America, and they were to go coast to coast, they would have taken the safest path from east to west or west to east, right? But the person that rolls with the punches typically goes all over the place. They'll have, oh my God, we almost froze to death and ate each other up in the Alps. But you can also get chaotically disoriented when you roll with the punches a little too much. Moderation is obviously the way to go. You pragmatize things that have to exist, like strategic resources. I got to have money. I got to have food and water. I got to have a shelter, blah, blah, blah. And then anything that you can send over to the artistic side of yourself and roll with the punches, the chaotic side of your brain, you let yourself experience a few things, like unwind. The amount of people that I know that have essentially awakened from a state of being, left brain to death by perhaps strict parents or weird upbringings, they typically go crazy for a little while, and then they calm down. Where do we go when we explore things? We go to the very edge of reality, right? If we want to explore what's over the elephant bone pile, you got to go to the pile and then go past it. When we wanted to cross an ocean to see if there was another continent, we had to risk. I mean, just imagine the Polynesians discovering Hawaii. How unbelievably, cataclysmically, astronomically against it was for people to get into little tiny boats and sail into the Pacific Ocean. It must have been the best summer of all time, with no storms, and they somehow were really good rowers, and they had enough food to survive a really long journey, but they found it. So you're sitting there wondering if we're dreaming this reality. Well, you need to go to the edge to look. You don't have to go, but just look over the edge, and that would be merely contemplating that it's actually happening, that this is actually more of a participant-related sport, and you're the participant. I think that's it. This one was just crawling up my backside. I was just like, man, I got to figure this out, and maybe just making an episode might help. But you guys have had fantastic comments about the dream stuff, so I just want to throw this out there. Anyway, as I said before, we have deepthoughtsradio.com now. The latest episode, once it renders inside YouTube, will be on the front page, so you just bring it up on your computer and it automatically plays. Now, if you're coming through a mobile device, because of mobile restrictions and video, which is a good thing, you can't access it. So I haven't moved over all of the feeds directly to the deepthoughtsradio.com, so it's still over at mkultraradio.com, but I'm sure in a few months this will be absolutely incorrect. If you dig the series, please subscribe. If you like this episode, please give me a thumbs up. Always interested in suggestions, getting lots of suggestions. My thing, I'll just repeat. Maybe I'll repeat this about every 10 episodes. When it comes to episodes, I really want to talk about things that no one talks about, and not necessarily deep, dark conspiracies that no one talks about. I'm into anything, but psychological areas where we just simply feel something is weird, but we don't talk about it. Roswell, it was a very specific thing that I feel like I had a lot of mysteries and holes, and out of all this, UFO series I watch on TV, having now investigated what I believe to be some of the most credible people that were involved, I can say that it looks very consistent to me, and it's inconsistent with what we see on television. It's very interesting. So where something's like that, we'll definitely get into it. New conspiracies that pop out, like no forest, no flat earth, that kind of stuff, always into that kind of thing. So if you guys see a really hot trending subject, let me know. That's how I found out about the no forest for flat earth. Someone said, have you seen this? It's amazing, da-da-da. So I want to give a thanks and a shout out for everybody who pointed me in that direction. Anyway, take care of yourself and someone else, and I will see you, as always, in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.